It's time for us to show forth the other side of Nuwapu. And that principle has always been raised amongst the ancient Mizraim. You want to call them that, Kemet. You want to call them that, Tamara, whatever you want to call us. And the principle is called Mat. It's the first principle of every order. And the sacred gathering spot is called Waset. It has been translated as Karnak, Aswan, but the sacred spot where the sacred temple was called Waset. You hear me? And the symbol was called Mat. Mat has been often interpreted to mean justice. I think in the Islamic world, the best interpretation of Mat became jihad. And those amongst them that were physical took jihad to mean physical war. And those amongst them called the mutasawwif, or the Sufi, took jihad to mean a spiritual struggle inside oneself against justice or injustice. Quran even said, injustice and impartiality will not be tolerated. So the symbol that you raise is the ostrich feather. You may have noticed it in the hieroglyphs. Many of your ancestors or deities have the symbol of the ostrich feather, and that's called the Mat. That's the foundation of all the mystical orders worldwide, be they Native American, Freemason, Essene, Magus, Knights of Columbus, Shriners, Theosophical Society, Astara, Rosicrucian. They all go back to the Mat. And this is why they say one of the first things that was created was the quill. The quill, which was the pen that did all the inscriptions of the Greek deity Tahuti, was the ostrich feather. They would carve it and they use it, the scribes, to write the many books of ancient Egypt that most people today have forgotten. But that was our symbol. Remember that symbol, Mat. It represents the struggle within inside. The reason why they chose the feather, because the feather is a very sturdy object, but in wind it fluctuates. But it'll flow with the wind. You notice the Native Americans put feathers on their arrows to make it stare straightly. Well, in ancient Egypt, that same symbol represented steering the Ka and the Ba through these troubled times, these winds. They call them sentimental winds of life. When pressures come down, the person that has a strong inner side survives. The person who has a weak inner side falls to the wayside, always. Those people whose principles in Nuwapu are based on a spiritual thing will survive any changes. Just as those people who are Ansari spiritual, regardless of where the surface went, they were still Ansars. Whether we was calling ourselves Hebrews, or Nuwapians, or Native Americans, or cowboys, whatever we called ourselves, because their roots in what we were doing were in the spiritual, not in the physical appearance of being a Muslim, wearing a tagiyah, wearing jalabiya. That wasn't where they were at. They were there spiritually. They were a cosmos. They were a part of the cosmos. The utterance, that word that stirs inside each one of us. And they get anchored in the word. And the foundation of it is the word is true or false. False manifests in the physical, truth always in the spiritual, because you can't lie in the spiritual sense. You cannot lie to your soul, because you cannot lie to yourself. And that's why in the language Hebrew they had nefesh and in Arabic nefsi. And they had combined the word spirit and self as one word. You could not lie because you cannot betray your spiritual self. You tell yourself the truth. So you are your best master, thus you are your best God. Because you cannot lie to God. And the only being that you come in contact with that you cannot lie to is yourself. So God therefore becomes the judge of the judge. That's why he said, I am that I am. He repeated I am twice. I am that I am. They say, oh, I am that which I am, or I am whom I am. He identifies his outer part, his outer being, and his inner being. He never told him his name. So when they ask you his name, say I am that I am. You have to learn the principle that I am that I am merely means what you see is what you get. It's a very simple thing. It sounds complicated. They've turned it into all these different mystical interpretations in the Kabbalah of the Jews, but simply means I am that I am. No more, no less. Alright? Any questions that you want to? I know one thing everybody keeps asking me, let me add this, is in our principles it says you got to take a long walk on a short path. People say, what do you mean by that? What it means is, I said that way back in 1970. And what I meant by that is we had a very short period of time to take a long walk. It takes most people a lifetime to be just a Christian, or a lifetime to be a Jew, or a lifetime to be an Egyptologist. And I said, well, between 1970 and the year 2000, we have 30 years. We got to take a long walk on a short path. The short path was for 30 years. The long walk was the amount of information and the amount of schools of thought that you would have to go through to be transformed from mortals to immortality. Transformed back into gods, back into deities, back into Neptune. That was going to be a long journey on a very short path. That's what it meant. If you want to be a good cosmos, you've got to learn to take a long walk on a short path. And most of you who walked with me for years have gotten so much information that it baffles the normal pedestrian when they encounter you on the streets. How could you possibly know that much information? The answer is, well, I took a long walk on a short path. And you're still on just one of the long paths. Just taking you to a short end of a stick. Any questions? Yes. Make yourself heard, please.
What do we do about the knowledge we didn't get? Like, say for people that came when we were in New Waco, how does the knowledge from the other schools behind us affect us being a God?
That's such a good question. It's frightening. Because what I found out, that you have two types of old timers. I used to say years ago, old timers are faithful but not true. You have two types of old timers. Those that were rooted in the community physically, and again, those that were rooted in the community spiritually. Those that are rooted in the community spiritually have a lot of spiritual insight on things they learned from me over the years. And that's their strength. But those that are rooted in the community physically were looking at me the way Musa looked at El Khidir and thought they knew what they was looking at and thought they was figuring out what I was doing. And as we get down this far, some of them look over now and see they never really understood the man they was talking to. You follow? So some of you people who just got here will never be able to have those schools. And you should have had by now spiritual masters raised amongst us who had taken that long walk on a short path and been able to come and instruct y'all in the many experiences that they went through while walking that path with me. Unfortunately, so many of them didn't because their hearts wasn't in it. They were just here physically. They wasn't here spiritually. They never really heard the message. You with me? So you missed those journeys. It doesn't mean, believe me, that old timers are good. That's not true. Most of them are faithful, like I said, but they're not true to me. They're the first one to stab me in the back. You follow? Because they were not groomed to be true. They came out of a world where dishonesty and self-preservation and self-righteousness and ego was the reigning force, and introduced them to a culture like the Ansar Allah tried to introduce, which meant restraining yourselves from the world and your families and everything else to prepare yourself. Most of them couldn't do it. They only pretended they did while they was in Ansar Allah. They were still on the phone, just still doing all the things that they was told not to do. So they never really got the spiritual side of what I was teaching. And we're in hopes in this time that it will come forth again. We're short on time, a little bit of time to get the job done, but it's time for us to raise again. And if people here can keep the secret sacred, then things will be revealed to them.